The red phone rang at exactly 3 in the morning. Colonel Jake Morrison reached for it before the second ring, his hand steady despite being pulled from deep sleep. 25 years in the military had trained him to wake up alert and ready for anything. But the voice on the other end made his blood run cold. "We have a problem, Jake. A big one." The voice belonged to Lisa Crawford, one of the best CIA analysts he had ever worked with. She never called unless the world was about to end. "How big?" Jake asked, already reaching for his uniform. "The kind that keeps presidents awake at night," Lisa replied. "I need you at Langley in 2 hours. Bring your passport." Jake hung up and looked at his wife sleeping beside him. Sarah had been a military wife for 15 years. She knew the drill. When that phone rang in the middle of the night, her husband had to go save the world again. He kissed her forehead gently and whispered that he would call when he could. The drive to CIA headquarters took 43 minutes through empty Washington streets. Jake had made this trip dozens of times, but never with this feeling in his gut. Lisa sounded scared, and Lisa Crawford did not scare easily. She had been tracking nuclear threats for 12 years, and had seen every kind of danger the world could throw it. America. The security guard. Langley checked Jake's identification 3 times before letting him through. That was unusual. Even more unusual was the fact that Admiral Paul Henderson was waiting for him in the lobby. When a Navy admiral met you at 3:30 in the morning, something very bad was happening somewhere in the world. "Jake, thank God you're here," Admiral Henderson said, shaking his hand firmly. "We need to get upstairs right now." They took the elevator to the 7th floor, a level Jake had only visited twice in his career. The doors opened to reveal a conference room filled with people he recognized from classified briefings. These were the people who made decisions that never appeared in newspapers. The people who kept America safe from threats that ordinary citizens never knew existed. Lisa Crawford stood at the front of the room next to a large screen showing satellite images. She looked tired, like she had been working for days without sleep. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her coffee cup had lipstick marks from hours of nervous drinking. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming so quickly," Lisa began. "What I'm about to show you changes everything we thought we knew about Iran's nuclear program." The screen changed to show a mountainous region Jake recognized as somewhere in western Iran. The image zoomed in on what looked like ordinary rocky hills, covered with sparse vegetation. Nothing seemed special about the landscape. "This is the Zagros Mountains, about 200 miles southwest of Tehran," Lisa continued. "For the past 6 months, our satellites have been picking up unusual seismic activity in this area. At first, we thought it might be natural earthquakes. Iran sits on several fault lines, so underground movement is normal." She clicked a button, and the image changed to show heat signatures and radiation readings. Red and yellow patches appeared scattered across the mountain range, like a connect-the-dots puzzle. 3 weeks ago, one of our deep cover assets in Iran sent us this. Lisa held up a small metal cylinder no bigger than a pen. "It's a radiation detector that spent 2 months hidden near this location. The readings show massive amounts of nuclear activity happening underground." Admiral Henderson leaned forward in his chair. "How deep underground?" "That's the problem," Lisa replied. "Our best estimates put the facility at least 3 miles beneath the surface, maybe deeper. They've built something down there that makes our deepest bunkers look like sandcastles." Dr. Susan Blake, a nuclear physicist Jake had worked with on previous missions, raised her hand. "What kind of nuclear activity are we talking about? Power generation? Weapons research?" Lisa's expression grew even more serious. "Both, and something else we've never seen before." She clicked the remote again, showing a technical diagram covered in symbols and numbers that hurt Jake's eyes to look at. Our analysis suggests they're not just building nuclear weapons, Lisa continued. They're developing compact fusion reactors. If they succeed, they could power weapon systems we can't even imagine. Or worse, they could sell the technology to anyone willing to pay. The room fell silent. Jake had seen plenty of briefings about nuclear threats, but this felt different. The people in this room looked genuinely frightened, and these were people who had faced down the Soviet Union, terrorist networks, and rogue nations for decades. There's more, Lisa said quietly. The facility appears to be protected by the most advanced air defense system we've ever encountered. Russian S-400 missiles, electronic warfare equipment, and something else our technical people can't identify. Getting close to this place would be like flying into a lightning storm. Captain Rick Turner, a special operations planner Jake had worked with in Afghanistan, spoke up from the back of the room. What about ground approach? Could we get a team? And on foot? Lisa shook her head. The entire mountain range is crawling with Revolutionary Guard units. They have patrols, sensors, and guard posts covering every possible approach route. Plus, even if we could get a team to the mountain, we still have the problem of getting through 3 miles of solid rock. Jake studied the images on the screen, his mind already working through possible solutions. What's the timeline? How long before they complete whatever they're building down there? Our best intelligence suggests they're 6 to 8 weeks away from bringing their first reactor online, Lisa answered. Once that happens, everything changes. Iran becomes a nuclear superpower overnight, and every terrorist group in the world will be knocking on their door with suitcases full of money. Admiral Henderson stood up slowly, his face grim. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a problem that conventional warfare cannot solve. We need something unprecedented, something that has never been tried before. Jake looked around the room at the faces of America's best and brightest. These people had solved impossible problems before, but this felt different. This felt like the kind of challenge that would require them to invent entirely new ways of fighting wars. Where do we start? Jake asked. Lisa smiled for the first time since he had arrived. We start by calling someone who thinks impossible problems are just puzzles waiting to be solved. The flight to Nevada took 4 hours on a military transport plane. Jake Morrison sat in uncomfortable silence next to Admiral Henderson, both men lost in their own thoughts about the impossible mission ahead of them. Outside the small windows, America stretched endlessly below them, reminding Jake of everything they were fighting to protect. Area 51 was not what most people imagined. There were no flying saucers or little green men, just endless desert, concrete buildings, and some of the smartest people in the world working on projects that would not exist for another 50 years. The place where America turned science fiction into reality. Dr. Alex Cooper met them at the landing strip. Jake had heard stories about Cooper, but had never met him in person. The man looked like a college professor who had forgotten to sleep for several days. His hair stuck up at odd angles, his clothes were wrinkled, and his glasses were held together with tape. But his eyes were sharp and focused, the eyes of someone who saw solutions where others saw only problems. Colonel Morrison, Admiral Henderson. Welcome to the future, Cooper said, shaking their hands with enthusiasm that seemed out of place, given the serious nature of their visit. Lisa Crawford called ahead and gave me the basic details. 3 miles of solid rock, right? Interesting problem. They followed Cooper into a building that looked ordinary from the outside, but contained laboratories that seemed like something from a movie. Machines hummed and beeped, screens showed complex equations, and technicians in white coats moved between workstations like dancers in a carefully choreographed performance. Tell me, gentlemen, what do you know about quantum physics? Cooper asked as they walked through the facility. Enough to know it gives me a headache, Jake replied honestly. Cooper laughed. Fair enough. Let me show you something that might change your mind. He led them to a room containing what looked like a metal archway surrounded by computers and cables. The arch was about 8 feet tall and 6 feet wide, just big enough for a person to walk through. "This is my baby," Cooper said, proudly. "I call it the phase gate. It can manipulate quantum fields to allow matter to pass through solid objects. In simple terms, it lets you walk through walls." Admiral Henderson studied the device with obvious skepticism. "How does it work?" "Imagine. Everything in the universe is made of tiny particles that are mostly empty space," Cooper explained, his hands moving as he talked. "The phase gate changes the way those particles interact with each other. For a brief time, solid matter becomes like a ghost. You can pass right through it." Jake walked around the device, examining it from every angle. "How brief?" "That's the limitation," Cooper admitted. "With current power sources, I can maintain the quantum field for about 47 minutes. After that, the system overheats and shuts down automatically. If someone is caught in the middle of a wall when that happens, well, let's just say it would be very unpleasant." The implications hit Jake immediately. "You're talking about creating a tunnel through 3 miles of mountain that only stays open for 47 minutes. "Exactly. It's never been tested on that scale, and the power requirements would be enormous. We would need portable fusion, reactors, quantum field generators, and navigation systems that don't exist yet. Plus, the tunnel would be unstable. Anyone going through it would experience temporal displacement, electromagnetic interference, and probably severe motion sickness." Admiral Henderson frowned. "It sounds impossible." 2 years ago, it was impossible," Cooper replied. "Last year, it was theoretical. Today, it's just very difficult. Tomorrow, with enough funding and the right team, it might actually work." A new voice joined the conversation from behind them. "Did someone say difficult mission?" Jake turned to see a woman in navy dress uniform approaching them. She was tall, athletic, and moved with the confident stride of someone who had spent years in dangerous situations. Her uniform displayed the insignia of a Navy SEAL, one of the most elite Special Forces units in the world. "Captain Kate Sullivan," she said, extending her hand to Jake. "I hear you need someone crazy enough to volunteer for an impossible mission." Jake shook her hand, impressed by her firm grip and direct gaze. "Captain, this mission is beyond dangerous. We're talking about experimental technology that might not work, hostile territory, and a timeline that gives us almost no room for error." Kate smiled. "Colonel, I've been doing impossible missions since I was 25 years old. The only difference is that this time we get to use toys that most people think are science fiction." Dr. Cooper's eyes lit up with excitement. "Captain, would you be willing to test the phase gate? We need to know how it affects human subjects before we can plan the actual mission." "When do we start?" Kate asked without hesitation. "Over the next 3 hours." Jake watched Kate Sullivan volunteer for tests that would have terrified most people. She walked through solid walls, experienced temporal displacement that made her age backwards by several seconds, and emerged from each test with detailed reports about the physical and psychological effects. "The disorientation is manageable," she reported after her 5th test. "It feels like being underwater and flying at the same time. Navigation would be challenging, but not impossible with the right equipment." Technical Sergeant Danny Walsh joined the team that afternoon. He was an electronics specialist who had worked on classified projects in Iraq and Afghanistan. His job would be to create communication systems that could function in the quantum-distorted environment of the tunnel. "Standard radio won't work," Walsh explained as he showed them prototype equipment. "The quantum fields interfere with normal electromagnetic signals. We need something that operates on different principles entirely." By evening, they had the basic framework of a plan. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos, one of the Air Force's best stealth pilots, would fly the mission using a modified aircraft that could carry the quantum tunneling equipment. Chief Petty Officer Tony Miller, an explosives expert, would handle the demolition charges needed to destroy the Iranian facility. The team gathered in Cooper's laboratory as the sun set over the Nevada desert. Jake looked at each face around the table. These people were volunteering for a mission that pushed the boundaries of science and human endurance. They would be the first humans to travel through 3 miles of solid rock using technology that existed only in theory. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake said, "we have 6 weeks to turn science fiction into reality. We need to build equipment that has never been built, train for conditions that have never existed, and execute a mission that most people would consider suicide." Kate Sullivan leaned back in her chair. "So basically it's Tuesday." The room erupted in laughter, and Jake knew they had the right team. These people did not just accept impossible missions. They turned them into victories. 3 weeks later, a secret air base in the Arabian Peninsula looked like a small city built in the middle of nowhere. Cargo planes arrived daily carrying equipment that did not appear on any official military inventory. Scientists, engineers, and special forces personnel worked around the clock preparing for a mission that would either save the world or become the most expensive failure in military history. Captain Kate Sullivan finished her morning run as the sun rose over the desert. She had been training with the quantum tunneling equipment for 18 days, and her body was finally adapting to the strange effects. The temporal displacement still made her feel sick, but she could function normally within minutes of emerging. From the quantum field, the training facility was a masterpiece of engineering built in just 2 weeks. Deep underground, technicians had created a mock-up of the Iranian nuclear facility using intelligence gathered from satellites and human sources. Every corridor, every security checkpoint had been recreated with careful attention to detail. "Morning, Captain," Lieutenant Jim Foster called out as Kate entered the command center. Foster was their communications expert, a quiet man who could make electronic equipment work in conditions that would defeat most engineers. "We just received the latest intelligence from Tehran." Kate studied the new photographs spread across the table. The images showed Iranian Revolutionary Guard units moving heavy equipment into the mountains. Trucks carried massive metal containers that looked like they weighed several tons each. "Any idea what they're moving?" Kate asked. "Dr. Blake thinks it's reactor components," Foster replied. "The size and shape match theoretical fusion reactor parts. If she's right, they're closer to completion than we thought." Dr. Susan Blake emerged from the analysis room looking worried. She had been studying Iranian nuclear data for 3 weeks, and the picture was becoming clearer every day. "Captain, we need to talk," she said. "There's something about this facility that doesn't make sense." They walked to a secure briefing room where Blake had set up a presentation that made Kate's head spin. Charts, graphs, and technical diagrams covered every wall. In the center was a 3-dimensional model of the underground facility that looked like something from a science fiction movie. "The power requirements are all wrong," Blake explained. "According to our calculations, they need at least 3 times more electricity than any fusion reactor should require. Either they're building something much larger than we thought, or they're powering something else entirely." Kate studied the model. The facility was enormous, stretching deep into the mountain like an underground city. "What else could they be powering? That's what worries me," Blake replied. 3 days ago, our satellites detected unusual electromagnetic signatures coming from the site. The patterns don't match anything in our databases. It's like they're using technology we don't understand. Before Kate could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the base. Red lights flashed in the corridors as personnel ran to their stations. Kate and Blake rushed to the command center where Colonel Morrison was standing in front of multiple screens showing satellite feeds. "What's happening?" Kate asked. "We just intercepted Iranian communications," Morrison replied grimly. "They're moving up their timeline. Intelligence suggests they plan to activate their facility in 2 weeks, not 6. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. 2 weeks was barely enough time to complete their preparations, let alone execute the mission. Kate looked around at the faces of her team members. These people had been working 18-hour days for weeks, pushing themselves and their equipment to the breaking point. "Can we be ready?" Morrison asked. Dr. Cooper, who had been working on the quantum tunneling equipment in the corner, looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "The phase gate is functional, but we haven't completed all the safety tests. The power systems are still experimental, and the navigation equipment needs another week of calibration." Chief Miller spoke up from where he was examining explosive devices. "The demolition charges are ready, but I need more time to study the facility layout. Placing explosives in an unstable quantum field is not something you want to improvise." Kate made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. "We go in 5 days." "Captain, that's not enough time," Foster protested. "The communication systems aren't fully tested, and we don't know how the quantum field will affect our equipment." "5 days is what we have," Kate replied firmly. "The Iranians aren't going to wait for us to feel comfortable. We train for 5 more days then. We execute the mission." The next 5 days passed in a blur of frantic activity. Kate's team practiced the insertion procedure dozens of times, each run revealing new problems that needed solutions. The quantum tunnel created electromagnetic interference that scrambled their radios. The temporal displacement affected their coordination and timing. The strange environment made even simple tasks feel like walking through thick liquid. Sergeant Linda Hayes, their weapons specialist, developed special ammunition that could function in the quantum-distorted environment. Regular bullets became unstable when exposed to the quantum field, sometimes disappearing entirely and sometimes exploding prematurely. These rounds are designed to maintain molecular cohesion in quantum flux, Hayes explained as she demonstrated the specialized weapons. They're more expensive than gold and completely untested in combat conditions. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos spent every available hour in the cockpit of the modified stealth aircraft. The USS Nighthawk had been equipped with quantum field generators that would create the tunnel, but the extra equipment made the plane difficult to fly. The weight distribution was wrong, the power systems were unstable, and the quantum generators created interference with the navigation systems. "It's like flying a washing machine with wings," Santos complained after a particularly difficult test flight, "but I can get us there and back, probably." On the night before the mission, Kate stood on the roof of the command building looking up at the stars. The desert sky was clear and bright, reminding her of camping trips with her father when she was a child. Those seemed like simpler times when the biggest worry was whether they had enough marshmallows for the campfire. Dr. Cooper joined her on the roof, carrying 2 cups of coffee that smelled like it had been brewing for hours. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "Every soldier has second thoughts before a mission like this," Kate replied. "The trick is not letting them stop you from doing what needs to be done." They stood in comfortable silence, watching satellites move across the sky like slow-moving stars. Somewhere out there, Iranian scientists were working to complete a project that could change the balance of power in the world. In a few hours, Kate and her team would attempt something that had never been tried before to stop them. "You know," Cooper said quietly, "if this works, we'll have proven that human ingenuity can overcome any obstacle. If it doesn't work, well, at least we'll have tried something amazing." Kate smiled. "That's what I like about you, Doc. Always looking on the bright side." The mission would begin at midnight. The USS Nighthawk lifted off at exactly midnight, its engines whisper quiet as it disappeared into the black sky. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos gripped the controls as the modified stealth aircraft carried them toward Iranian airspace. Behind her, the quantum tunneling equipment hummed with barely contained energy that made the entire plane vibrate. Captain Kate Sullivan checked her equipment one final time. The specialized weapons felt strange in her hands, heavier than normal guns, but somehow less solid, as if the quantum field was already affecting them. Her team sat in tense silence, each person focused on their part of the mission that would either save the world or kill them all. "Approaching target zone," Santos announced through the intercom. "Iranian air defenses are active, but we're still invisible to their radar." Through the small window, Kate could see the Zagros Mountains rising like dark teeth against the starlit sky. Somewhere 3 miles beneath those peaks, Iranian scientists were putting the finishing touches on a project that could change everything. In 37 minutes, she and her team would find out exactly what they were building. The quantum tunneling device, activated with a sound like thunder mixed with breaking glass. The air inside the plane shimmered and twisted as reality bent. Around them, Kate felt her stomach lurch as the temporal displacement effects kicked in. Time seemed to slow down and speed up at the same moment, making her feel like she was falling and flying simultaneously. "Tunnel is stable," Dr. Cooper announced from his position at the control panel. "You have 47 minutes starting now." Kate led her team toward the rear of the plane where a circular opening had appeared in the floor. The opening showed not the ground 3 miles below, but a shimmering passage that seemed to stretch forever into the earth. The quantum tunnel looked like looking down a well filled with liquid starlight. "Remember, stay together and move fast," Kate told her team. "The tunnel will affect your sense of direction and time. Trust your equipment, not your instincts." She jumped first, feeling the strange sensation of falling through solid matter. The mountain passed around her like a dream, rock and stone flowing past her body without resistance. Her stomach told her she was falling, but her eyes saw her moving horizontally through a corridor of shifting light. Lieutenant Foster jumped next, followed by Sergeant Hayes, Technical Sergeant Walsh, and Chief Miller. Each person experienced the journey differently. Foster felt like he was swimming through thick honey. Hayes thought she was flying through clouds made of electricity. Walsh later described it as riding inside a lightning bolt. The descent through 3 miles of solid rock took exactly 12 minutes. Kate emerged into the Iranian facility feeling dizzy and disoriented, but her training kicked in immediately. She rolled to one side and brought up her weapon, scanning for threats while her team materialized behind her. They had landed in what appeared to be a storage room filled with metal containers and electronic equipment. The walls were smooth concrete, and the air hummed with the sound of powerful machinery somewhere deeper in the facility. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows that seemed to move on their own. "Sound off?" Kate whispered into her radio. "Foster." "Here. Communications are working." "Hayes, weapons ready." "Walsh, electronics functioning." "Miller, explosives armed and ready." Kate checked her watch. 35 minutes remaining before the tunnel collapsed. They needed to move fast. The team made their way through corridors that seemed impossibly large for an underground facility. The ceilings were at least 20 feet high, and the corridors were wide enough for trucks to drive through. Everything was built on a scale that suggested the Iranians were planning something much bigger than anyone had imagined. "Captain, you need to see this," Walsh called from a side room. Kate looked inside and felt her blood freeze. The room contained computers and control panels, but mixed among them were devices that looked like nothing she had ever seen. Smooth metal surfaces covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Screens showing patterns that seemed to move when she was not looking directly at them. "This isn't human technology," Hayes whispered. Before Kate could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors as Iranian voices echoed from hidden speakers. They had been discovered. "Move, move, move," Kate shouted, leading her team deeper into the facility. They ran through corridors filled with Iranian soldiers who seemed just as confused as they were. The quantum tunnel had apparently set off every security system in the building. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions as guards tried to figure out where the intruders had come from. Kate's specialized ammunition proved its worth as her team fought their way through the facility. The quantum-stable bullets punched through body armor and concrete walls with equal ease. The Iranians returned fire with conventional weapons that seemed weak and slow by comparison. They reached the main chamber after 15 minutes of running. Battles. Kate stopped in the doorway and stared at something that challenged everything she thought she knew about the world. The chamber was enormous, at least 300 feet across and 100 feet high. In the center stood a device that was clearly not built by human hands. It looked like a giant crystal surrounded by metal rings that rotated slowly around it. The crystal pulsed with light that changed colors and patterns that seemed almost alive. Iranian scientists in white coats worked frantically at control panels around the device. They seemed unaware of the battle raging in the corridors, completely focused on their work. Numbers and symbols flowed across dozens of screens, showing data that made no sense to human eyes. "My God," Miller breathed. "What is that thing?" Dr. Reza Ahmad, the lead Iranian scientist, looked up from his control panel with surprise and fear. He shouted something in Farsi that Kate did not understand, but his meaning was clear. He was trying to warn his colleagues about the intruders. Walsh ran to the nearest computer terminal and plugged in his analysis equipment. "Captain, this is incredible. They're not just building nuclear weapons. This device is some kind of communication array. It's sending signals into space." Kate checked her watch. 18 minutes remaining. Sending signals to who? "I don't know, but the signal is getting stronger. Whatever they're trying to contact, I think it's starting to respond." As if summoned by his words, the crystal in the center of the chamber pulsed brighter. The metal rings spun faster, and the screens around the room showed patterns that were definitely not random. Something was answering the Iranian signal. Kate realized that they had stumbled into something far more dangerous than a nuclear weapons program. The Iranians had found alien technology and were using it to call something from the depths of space. Something that was already on its way to Earth. "Change of plans," Kate announced. "We're not just destroying this facility. We're taking control of it." The mission had just become a race to save not just America, but all of humanity. 15 minutes remained before the quantum tunnel collapsed forever. Captain Kate Sullivan watched the alien crystal pulse with increasing intensity as something in deep space responded to the Iranian signal. The metal rings around the crystal spun faster, creating a humming sound that seemed to vibrate through her bones. "Walsh, can you shut it down?" Kate shouted over the noise of approaching Iranian soldiers. Technical Sergeant Walsh worked frantically at the computer terminal, his fingers flying over keys marked with symbols he did not recognize. "The system is fighting me, Captain. It's like the technology is alive and doesn't want to be controlled." Gunfire erupted from the corridor entrance as more Revolutionary Guard soldiers arrived. Sergeant Hayes took position behind a concrete barrier and returned fire with her quantum-stable ammunition. The Iranian bullets sparked harmlessly off the alien metal surfaces, but her shots punched through their body armor like paper. "Foster, get on the radio," Kate ordered. "Tell command what we've found down here." Lieutenant Foster activated his communication equipment, but instead of reaching their base, the alien technology intercepted his signal. The screens around the chamber displayed his transmission in real time, translating his English words into symbols that flowed like living text across the displays. "Captain, the alien system is learning from our communications," Foster reported with amazement and terror. "It's analyzing our language, our technology, everything we're transmitting." Chief Miller had been studying the explosive charges needed to destroy the facility, but now he faced a terrible choice. "If I blow this place, we might cut off the alien signal. But we could also trigger something we don't understand. That crystal could be a weapon, a beacon, or something worse." Kate looked at her watch. 12 minutes remaining. The quantum tunnel was becoming unstable, and they could feel the mountain beginning to press down around them. If they did not leave soon, they would be trapped 3 miles underground forever. Dr. Ahmad, the Iranian scientist, suddenly broke away from his colleagues and approached Kate with his hands raised. He spoke in heavily accented English that was barely understandable over the noise of battle. "You must listen," he pleaded. "We did not know what we were awakening. The signal, it is not communication. It is a location beacon. Something is coming to Earth because of what we have done." Kate grabbed the scientist by his lab coat. "What do you mean, coming to Earth?" "The crystal was found in our desert 40 years ago," Ahmad explained quickly. "We thought it was a meteorite, but when we began studying it, we discovered it was a machine waiting for the right energy source to activate." Walsh looked up from his computer terminal with wide eyes. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures moving through space toward our solar system. Whatever this beacon called, it's big and it's fast." The implications hit Kate like a physical blow. The Iranian nuclear program had accidentally created a beacon that was guiding hostile alien forces toward Earth. Every minute the signal continued broadcasting was another minute the aliens had to lock onto their planet's location. "How do we stop it?" Kate demanded. Ahmad shook his head sadly. "We tried to shut it down when we realized what was happening, but the crystal will not respond to our commands anymore. It has its own intelligence, its own purpose." Foster suddenly straightened up from his radio equipment. "Captain, I might have an idea. The alien system is learning our language by analyzing our transmissions. What if we taught it something it cannot understand?" "What do you mean?" "Human concepts that have no logical basis. Emotions, art, music, poetry. Things that cannot be translated into pure information." Kate stared at him. "You want to confuse an alien computer with Shakespeare?" "Not confuse it. Reprogram it. If we can input enough uniquely human concepts, we might be able to change what the beacon is broadcasting." 8 minutes remaining. The quantum tunnel was becoming so unstable that pieces of rock were beginning to materialize inside the chamber. The team was running out of time, and Options. Kate made the decision that would either save humanity or doom it. Do it. Upload everything human you can think of. Music, literature, mathematical concepts, philosophical ideas. Show this thing what humanity really is. Foster's fingers flew over the keyboard as he accessed everything in his portable database. Music from Mozart and Miles Davis filled the chamber, as the alien system tried to process the concept of beauty without purpose. Poetry from Emily Dickinson and Pablo Neruda flowed across the screens as the crystal struggled to understand metaphor and emotion. The crystal's pulsing changed rhythm, becoming erratic and uncertain. The metal rings slowed their rotation as the alien intelligence tried to process concepts that had no logical foundation. For the first time since they had arrived, the beacon signal wavered. "It's working," Walsh reported. "The signal is changing. Instead of broadcasting location coordinates, it's transmitting human cultural data." Kate realized what they had accomplished. Instead of calling alien invaders to Earth, the beacon was now broadcasting humanity's greatest achievements to the galaxy. They were announcing not just their location, but their worth as a civilization. 5 minutes remaining. Iranian soldiers had stopped shooting, apparently as amazed by what was happening as Kate's team. Dr. Ahmed worked alongside Walsh, helping to input more human concepts into the alien system. The beacon is now transmitting our music, our art, our scientific discoveries, and our capacity for both creation and destruction, Ahmad reported. Any civilization receiving this signal will know that Earth is defended by beings capable of turning their own defensive beacon against them. 3 minutes remaining. Kate made the hardest decision of her military career. Miller, set the charges. We destroy everything except the beacon itself. Captain, if we leave the beacon active, it will continue broadcasting our location. Yes, but now it's broadcasting a warning instead of an invitation. Any hostile civilization will know that Earth is protected by humans who can adapt alien technology to serve their own purposes. The explosions began as Kate's team raced toward the quantum tunnel. The Iranian facility collapsed behind them as carefully placed charges destroyed the nuclear research equipment while leaving the alien beacon intact. The crystal continued to pulse, but now it sang with human voices and transmitted human dreams to the stars. The quantum tunnel pulled them upward through 3 miles of solid rock as the mountain shook with controlled explosions. They emerged into the USS Nighthawk just as the tunnel collapsed forever, sealing the alien beacon in its mountain tomb where it would continue its work. 6 hours later, deep space monitoring stations around the world began detecting response signals from distant star systems. Some were clearly hostile, probing for weaknesses. Others seemed curious, almost friendly. But all of them had received the same message that Earth was inhabited by beings who would defend their world with intelligence, courage, and the kind of stubborn creativity that could turn an invasion beacon into a declaration of independence. Operation Midnight Hammer had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. They had not just prevented a nuclear threat, they had announced to the galaxy that humanity was ready for whatever came next.